Back in a time when we were all arguing whether Nintendo or Sega was cooler, and maybe people thought Sega was edgy or more grown up, well, there was a really grown up alternative that a lot of kids, myself included at the time, had never even heard of, and that was Neo Geo. They had an arcade machine and they had a home console with the exact same architecture. In fact, even today, you can play the arcade games, the original arcade games, on the original home console if you have the right adapters. It was unheard of to have arcade gameplay at home, and this was almost a decade before the Dreamcast had made that mainstream. So Neo Geo was the real deal, but it was also out of reach for most people. For that reason, I'm very excited that this important part of arcade history that so many of us missed out on is now available for home release, and is pretty reasonably priced, all things considered. This includes many of the games for the Neo Geo, but it's also the home version of the game. So you get the AES, the home console versions, but also the MVS, the arcade games. Now it's worth noting these are only the first party games. There were, of course, third party games developed for this platform back in the day. None of those are currently represented in this game's list. But we get 50 games, so how does it hold up? Even today, collecting for Neo Geo is famously expensive. There's a whole world of more casual gamers that have never had the chance to experience Neo Geo, and that's one of the reasons why I think this MVSX Neo Geo cabinet is so important. It gives people the ability to experience these games. Yes, these games have been released elsewhere in game bundles and packages, but now we get it in the home arcade format. And make no mistake, home arcade now is its own category, whether it's 3/4 scale like Arcade 1-Up or a little bit bigger like the Legends Ultimate. These are machines that are designed to replicate old school arcade gameplay in the house, and they're a huge category. And I'm very excited to see Neo Geo finally represented here. Now, there are only a handful of these machines that have been assembled and distributed, so there's not a lot of information out there still. And you're going to see more information leak out over time, but there are two what I believe to be exaggerated narratives emerging. And after spending time with the cabinet, I want to give you my take on these two bullet points. And we're going to get into the overall review as well, of course. But number one is audio quality. I would stop panicking about the audio quality on this cabinet. Yes, it isn't great. It lacks all bass. This is caused by having smaller speakers, but also doesn't help that they're not ideally positioned. They fire slightly downward, and they're already positioned as low on the tabletop cabinet as they can go. It wouldn't have been my choice, but they do sound crisp, and they play plenty loud, and the audio levels are widely adjustable, which has been a problem on some Arcade 1-Up cabinets. But even more so, I feel strongly about the claim the games list is not a good value. I very much disagree with this. I've read this comment quite a bit all over the internet. I think it's insane. I think partly it's fans of some other companies maybe coping a little bit. I don't recall anyone saying there was an issue with the games list when it was hinted that Arcade 1-Up was doing what I think was a dedicated Samurai Showdown cabinet, which would have had 3, 4, 5 games. Yes, the games list on this cabinet is fighter heavy, and yes, it is restricted right now to first party SNK games. So some of the games people have requested in the community, check and see, they're often not SNK published games because the MVS platform was open to other publishers. So that your favorite game that you really like that's not here, that's probably why. So I understand all of that. And I also understand that not everybody's a fan of Neo Geo's distinctive style or their game properties. But for $450 to $500, there's no question in my mind that this is a premier list of games and a very good value. Now, with that out of the way, there are a number of great, decent, and not so great points about this cabinet, and I want to walk through all of this with you. First, availability. We know Amazon is the first retailer to officially pick this up. I can tell you these guys are, of course, in talks with other retailers. We'll see what happens, but it is available on Amazon, which is huge. I can also tell you, this is confirmed from Unico, there will be no special editions this holiday. I didn't ask you about special editions into the future, but overall they seem pretty negative on special editions in general. They don't want to split up their user base like that. And they know that some other products have come out with different special variations that have left a bad taste in many of our mouths. You're not going to get that here. Now, I have to tell you guys, I did experience some slowdown when there was a lot of action on screen, particularly in Metal Slug 2 and on one of the Samurai Showdown games. Now, if you look online, you will find threads of people observing slowdown in the original Neo Geo physical arcade hardware. So I'm not ready to blame the emulation here. This may just have been an issue with Neo Geo, and the slowdown here reflects that. If any of you guys have the mini consoles, you know that when there was slowdown in the original Super Nintendo, the Super Nintendo Mini had some slowdown too. But it's something I observed, and I feel like I should tell you about it. So I was given a firmware update that might potentially help, and I wanted to show you how to update the firmware. I've got a USB drive inserted into the back of the cabinet. Go to System, System Update, and you just put the firmware update in the root of the USB drive. You can see the USB icon does display in the event that you have a USB inserted. Now let's talk about some of the finer points of the menu and just getting around the cabinet in general. You see this back button? I'm at a place where I can't go back, and yet the back display shows up. And there is a dedicated hardware back button. So I don't know why the yellow button is designated as back, and I don't know why the menu is prompting me to hit back when I can't. Should be very easy for them to fix with a firmware update, and I hope that they do. Lots of different language options, and a lot of people assumed incorrectly that the new violence updates are tied to a particular system language. That is not true. These are independent settings. You can pick whether you want to play the arcade games or the console games. Of the image settings, I preferred either pixel scaling, which is basically pixel perfect with no filters applied, or horizontal scanning lines. Now the H, the V, and the 40 degree, that seems kind of confusing. It's simply horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. I've never seen vertical or diagonal scan lines before, but then again, I haven't gamed on a CRT monitor in a really long time, so I'm not sure where those come from, but I do find the horizontal lines to be pretty nice. I was not a fan of the smooth scaling. So let's talk through what I like, and there's a lot to like here. I feel almost silly saying this, but I have to tell you guys, the marquee on this cabinet is gorgeous. It's actually stunning. I didn't think a marquee could be a highlight of an arcade. This one looks really good. Video, frankly, does not do it justice. When you see this in person, you'll understand what I mean. The light is perfectly diffused. It is an incredibly evenly backlit box. It just looks like it's glowing. Somehow they've diffused the light so well that you can't at all tell any hint of shadow or shadowing. Next, the monitor is very, very nice. It is an IPS monitor. This is higher quality than any of the other mass-produced home arcade products I've ever seen. Leagues above Arcade 1-Up's BOE monitor. And even at Games Legends, which has a pretty nice monitor, this is much better than that. The viewing angles are very, very wide, which is helpful if you're watching somebody play, or even if you're playing two-player and you're standing shoulder to shoulder. Overall, the build quality is very solid. I'm told the wood panels are higher quality here than Arcade 1-Up. Now, I have no way to independently verify that, but it does feel very solid. And the color-matched screw-hole covers are a nice touch. Next, game selection. I already covered this earlier, but with the vast number of first-party SNK MVS titles, we also get the AES versions. I don't really plan to play those versions, but I guess from a completionist perspective, it's nice to have both. Now, my hope is that they're going to offer game expansions in the future, and GameSpot broke news that that was going to be the case. Let me tell you guys, it is not confirmed. This might be something they're currently working on, but someone at the company got out ahead of themselves a little bit when they posted some stuff, so it is not certain. And I'm only telling you that because if you're buying this cabinet simply because you expect future games, I wouldn't recommend that. We may or may not get future games. I tend to think we will, but we don't know for sure. Scan lines, that's a nice touch. I'm starting to think that's something we should get on all home arcade products. And it includes different versions of scan lines, including vertical and even diagonal, which I've never seen before. The button and the stick quality is very nice. Now, I'm told the original MVS used hapsticks. These are not hapsticks, and these are not even Sanwa sticks. They're clones. but they feel fantastic. They feel very good. If you've heard that some of these clone controls feel as good as the original, if you're like me, I didn't believe that. Now I believe that. These are very, very good quality clones. And I would contrast that with some of the crappier quality clones that I've used on other arcade products. Nice to see quality here. It also has a nice circular restrictor gate. The buttons are concave, true to the original MVS design, and they feel very nice. I'm told they're designed to mimic one-to-one the resistance levels and feel of a Hap Cherry Switch button. The control panel is very, very nice looking. Overall, the cabinet actually looks really good, which is remarkable because the MVS wasn't a beautiful arcade machine, and somehow this just very glossy package that they've put together for us works, and it does look very good. Here are the elements of this cabinet that I do not like. The longer I played this, and I really want to stress this, the more I wanted a deeper control panel to rest my palm. It's not uncomfortable per se, but it should have come with a deeper control panel. I suspect these dimensions were determined before that strip at the top was mapped out. I could be wrong about that, but I just really don't understand why the buttons and the sticks are so close to the edge. And if I'm going to talk about the control panel, I have to also talk about the width. Now, I measured, and from the edge of the player 1 buttons to the beginning of the player 2 stick, this is almost identical to the Marvel Superheroes Arcade 1-Up. So if you're familiar with Arcade 1-Up and you've played 2-player there, you've probably experienced what I experienced with the MVSX. Yeah, it's a little cramped, but it is completely doable. And that's a trade-off I've always been willing to make because it creates more room for the arcade. These are, after all, scaled down machines, but all that is to say I found the 2-player setup reasonable. Also, this cabinet has 6 buttons, which does provide flexibility in the event of any potential but unconfirmed future games. But this is an MVS cabinet, and it really should have the button layout of an MVS. Then that's 4 buttons in a line and a slightly curved line to nail the original look and feel of the cabinet. Having to constantly ignore 2 extra buttons is weird. It is, however, nice that the software allows you to map the buttons as you wish. The monitor is not an NVS authentic 4x3. The company tells me 4x3 monitors are difficult and very expensive to source. Maybe some panel manufacturer will start making those in bigger scales since retro cabinets are taking off. That's my hope for the future anyway. The audio could use some bass, so I mentioned that earlier, but if I'm going to talk about stuff I don't like about this cabinet, I have to mention the positioning of the speakers being so low and pointed downward at that is not ideal, and I would have liked to see a little more powerful speakers.
He shoots from the outside.
Thank you.
Alright, now are the list of what I think of as nitpicks. These are things I don't really like about the cabinet, but I don't classify them as reasons to not buy it. The power button is on the rear of the cabinet, and it's a little tough to get to, but it also can get caught or stuck when trying to turn it off. The design of the cabinet is clearly bar top first. Now you guys know you can buy this for just the bar top for $450 US, or you can buy it with the pedestal for $500. I think most people are going for that pedestal bundle, and that's what's on Amazon right now. Now, I wouldn't have put the coin door on the bar top if I designed this, because I think most people are going to have it on the pedestal, in which case it looks goofy with 2 coin doors. However, that criticism is completely negated if you're going to use this in bar top format, in which case the faux coin door on the bar top is actually kind of nice. The user interface, as far as the menu, the fonts, all of that, it's very clean, it looks very modern, but it does not inspire a feeling of nostalgia, which I think is important in a retro gaming product, even down to the fonts and menu. Speaking of the user interface, there is a dedicated back button, but when you're navigating things in the menu, you're going to see a little prompt to hit the yellow button for back. That's weird because we have the dedicated button, but it's also weird because that prompt will show up when the back button doesn't do anything. So it's just telling you to hit yellow for back, but it's a dead button at that point. That's something that could be easily fixed with a firmware update, and I hope it will be. Overall, navigating the cabinet is just a little bit odd. you use the options button to add credits. Now, I like that they have two different buttons to add credits and then to hit start on player 1 or player 2. That's something that's missing, for example, from Arcade 1UP that I would have liked to have seen from them. So I'm a fan of that, but I'm not sure why options is the button to add a credit. Maybe just because it's located in the middle of the cab. I really want to see somebody do a coin door button. They don't cost very much. They look like a coin door. They light up like a coin door. And you can map it so when you press that button, it actually adds a coin, which is shocking, I know. One more item on the nitpick category. The original MVS hardware was 59.1 hertz, meaning 59.1 frames were displayed every second. This monitor is a more conventional 60 frames per second. So it is not perfect in 1-to-1. However, I cannot tell with my naked eye. I doubt anybody can tell with the naked eye. And, all that said, I understand people want authenticity here, and I would never begrudge that. I've talked with the company about this. They have no fix at the moment. It sounds like if this is something that can be fixed with software, it will be, but there's nothing confirmed I can share with you other than I found it as a non-issue personally. Alright, so those are a lot of words, but I have to boil this down to, can I recommend this product or not? This is the first home arcade cabinet from Unico, and on one hand, it shows a bit with some rough patches or rough spots around the edges. On the other hand, and it's kind of contradictory, but this is an incredibly polished product. There are gaps, there are imperfections, but this is a nice, shiny, glossy package. It's a good looking cabinet. It uses very good quality controls. And it has a terrific monitor. Overall, as a package, knowing that we get 50 games, in a world where we probably would have been very happy to get 10 or 20 games, because we're used to, 3 or 5 at a time for this kind of price point, this is quite easy to recommend for most folks. Who I would not recommend this to, Neo Geo purists. If you're into just the original hardware, you already know this is emulation, and I have to tell you it is imperfect emulation. For that reason, I would not suggest this product for you. But if you're like, I think most people watching this video, you're either generally into home arcade products, you want the smaller, lighter products, so you're like me and you have a basement full of these arcade machines, this is a very easy recommend. And if you're just a fan of Neo Geo or feel like you missed out on a lot of these games back in the day, and maybe you've never gone back and replayed them because you wanted to play it in that original arcade format, now's your chance. And then in that case also, it's a very easy recommend. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. And if you really enjoy the channel, I'd like to invite you to join some of my most loyal viewers and hit that join button and become a member of Unqualified Critics. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.